Catherine Walters was born on the 13th of June 1839 in Toxteth, Liverpool. Her mother, Mary Ann Fowler, died during childbirth in 1843, and her father, Edward Walters, struggled to raise Catherine and her other siblings. He worked as a customs officer in Liverpool and went on to be an innkeeper in Cheshire. Despite her father's efforts to provide for the family, Catherine's upbringing was quite poor. Liverpool was undergoing an industrial revolution. The city was dirty and full of disease. The air was filled with toxic fumes, and Catherine and her family were frequently malnourished. What's more, her father was a drunk. There is little known of Catherine's early life, as she doesn't have any memoirs and she kept the information to herself. Supposedly, a few years after her mother's death, she was sent to a convent school. However, she disliked it very much and would eventually run away. As a young teen, she got her first job working at a bowling alley called the Black Jack Tavern. Her job was simple. All she had to do was set up the pins before each game of Skittles. Skittles is an old European lawn game which later evolved into bowling. Because of her time working there, she was nicknamed Skittles, which she was famously known as. After this, she found work in a stable, and here she learnt to ride as well as many other equestrian skills. Although she found a job she enjoyed, the pay was poor and her quality of life in Liverpool wasn't the best. Despite the conditions she faced in Liverpool, she managed to escape. During her teenage years, she met Lord Fitzwilliam, who was blown away by her beauty. At the age of 16, she went with Lord Fitzwilliam to London and spent 2 years being his mistress. When the relationship came to an end, he generously gave her £2,000, as well as an annual pension of £300. Unlike many other courtesans of the time, who would usually expose their lovers, Catherine did not. This loyalty would go on to be very useful for Catherine, as future lovers knew that they could trust her. Furthermore, the generous annual pensions were just an extra, in case she was ever tempted. Catherine was described to possess a classical beauty. She had grey-blue eyes, chestnut hair, and an 18-inch waist. However, it wasn't just her good looks that made her stand out from the rest of the courtesans. Her personality was very different, as she was loving, caring, and original. She always acted like herself, instead of trying to present herself as something she was not. Henry Labouchere said this about Catherine: "She had the most capacious heart I know, and must be the only whore in history to retain her heart intact." In 1858, when she was 19 years old, Catherine became the mistress of Spencer Compton Cavendish, known as Marquess Hartington. He would go on to become the 8th Duke of Devonshire. Marquess Hartington was infatuated by Catherine and treated her extremely well. Catherine would frequently tell Hartington about her love for horses, as well as her desire to ride, as she had done a few years prior while working in the stables. This was a topic that they would often speak of, as Hartington was very interested in horse racing. In response to this, Hartington bought her a lavish townhouse in Park Street, Mayfair, which had extensive land, as well as a stable of thoroughbreds, a breed of expensive horses known for its use in competitive races. On top of this, he gave her a £500 annual pension, once the tales and gossip of the affair had cooled down. The annual pension given to Catherine continued for years. Even after the Duke died in 1809, the Cavendish family continued to pay. For the next few years, she would spend lots of her time with her horses, improving her riding skills. As well as this, she made sure to be elegantly dressed, obtaining hand-tailored riding gear. To make it the perfect fit, she would sit astride a wooden horse and then be measured up. In the 1860s, Catherine could frequently be found riding in Hyde Park. Although she would go on to be remembered as a famous courtesan, she was just as renowned for being a skilled rider and was noted as the most elegant horsewoman of her era. She became so popular that many people came to Hyde Park's Rotten Row just to get a glimpse of her riding. Many would lust over her beauty, riding skills, and the skin-tight clothes she wore, tailored by Henry Poole & Co., which apparently she wore without underwear. Amongst those in the large crowds of sightseers were always groups of upper-class ladies. These ladies grew jealous of her and started to copy the cut of her perfectly fitting riding habit. This refers to the attire worn by women for horseback riding. It usually consists of a tailored jacket with a long skirt, a tailored shirt, and a hat. Catherine pulled off her look so well that many said she looked like a princess. Those who could afford it imitated her style, and she became a renowned trendsetter. Day by day, her reputation grew. In the 1860s, poems of Catherine were written, ballads sung, and even portraits of her were commissioned. Edwin Landseer painted Catherine and called it the Pretty Horsebreaker. It was exhibited at the Royal Academy. While riding in public, she called herself Anonyma in order to try and hide her identity, but almost everybody knew that she was really Catherine Walters. A letter written to the Times in July 1862 described just how popular she was and the crowds that gathered to watch. Expectation is raised to the highest pitch. A handsome woman drives rapidly by in a carriage, drawn by thoroughbred ponies of surpassing shape and action. The driver is attired in the pork pie hat introduced by Anonyma. But alas, she caused no effect at all, for she is not Anonyma. She is only the Duchess of A, the Marchioness of B, the Countess of C, or some other of Anonyma's many imitators. The crowd, disappointed, reseat themselves and wait. Another pony carriage succeeds, and another, with the same depressing result. At last, their patience is rewarded. Anonyma and her ponies appear, and they are satisfied. She threads her way dexterously, with an unconscious air, through the crowd, commented upon by the hundreds who admire and the hundreds who envy her. She pulls up her ponies to speak to an acquaintance, and her carriage is instantly surrounded by a multitude. She turns and drives back again towards Apsley House, and then away into the unknown world, nobody knows where. With her newfound fame, it was negatively affecting Hartington, as it could become an obstacle for his career as a politician. Despite both caring deeply for each other, Hartington decided the relationship could go on no longer. Thus, their liaison ended in 1862. Yet, the time they spent together would greatly benefit Catherine for years to come. Hartington not only bought her properties and gave her money, but he also introduced her to the tailors Henry Poole & Co., with whom she would do business for many years to come, and he also hired a tutor so she could become a well-educated lady. With the Hartington affair over, she became quite sad, but she moved on quickly and had a short-lived relationship with Aubrey de Vere Beauclerc in New York. Then, in 1863, she moved to Paris and had a series of different lovers. These included the Minister of Finance, Achille Fould, the diplomat and poet Wilfrid Scawen Blunt, and Emperor Napoleon III. While in Paris, she was famed for driving her own carriage, pulled by two thoroughbreds, through the large park called the Bois de Boulogne. She was usually accompanied by two grooms that looked after her horses. All three always wore dashing tailored outfits. Blunt was infatuated with her and remained so for the rest of his life. The affair ended when Lord Crowley, the father of Blunt's fiancée, who was also the ambassador to France, heard what was going on. He immediately sent Blunt back to England, making him resign from his post. Although Blunt later married and started a family, he still had love for Catherine. In the late 1890s, he wrote a poem dedicated to Catherine called Esther. Also, around this time, they began to write letters to each other. They became friends and remained so until Catherine's death. With the start of the Franco-Prussian War in 1870, Catherine moved back to her Mayfair home in London, and here she lived for the remainder of her life. She continued her passions for horse riding, and on Sundays hosted afternoon tea parties, which were attended by influential men throughout London. One such man that frequently assisted was the MP and future Prime Minister William Gladstone. However, it's unlikely that the grand old man was one of her clients. It was also around this time that she met her most famous lover, the Prince of Wales, later King Edward VII. The prince was in his mid-30s at the time and was 2 years younger than Catherine. As with many of her lovers, the prince quickly fell for Catherine. Throughout the years, he gave her a generous allowance, access to his personal physician, and sent her over 300 love letters. When the relationship ended, the prince asked for the letters to be returned to him. Catherine did so without any questions. During the 1880s, she got into a serious relationship with Alexander Horatio Bailey. Although she never legally married, for a time she was known as Mrs. Bailey. As with her past relationships, it also ended. Throughout her life as a courtesan, it was her beauty, loyalty, and discretion that made many men fall in love with her. Of course, rumours would spread about her being involved with important and wealthy men, but Catherine never confirmed or denied these rumours. This set her apart from other courtesans, making her an extremely sought-after companion. Not only that, but she managed her finances well and wasn't left destitute, something which was common for many of the courtesans of the time. Her career was long and successful. She finally retired in the 1890s at the age of around 50 as a wealthy woman of society. After she retired, she became involved with Gerald de Saumarez. They had met back in 1879 when she was 40 and Gerald only 16. With over a decade having passed, they became lovers. Their time together only lasted a few years, but they remained close friends right up until Catherine's death. She died on the 5th of August 1920 at her Mayfair home due to a cerebral hemorrhage. With no children, she left her Mayfair home to her ex-lover and friend, Gerald. Supposedly, she also owned a hotel in England and France, but it's unclear what happened to these properties. Catherine Walters was buried in the graveyard of a monastery in Crawley, West Sussex. Catherine Walters didn't leave any memoirs or a diary. In a certain way, it's a testament to her good nature, as after her death, none of her clients would be negatively affected. She was remembered for her charisma, honesty, loyalty, and capacity for love. Thank you everyone for watching this video on Catherine Walters. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave me a comment and a like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I hope everyone had a really good new year, and if you've got any suggestions, please send me an email in the description or leave me a comment. That's all from me. I'll see you in the next Forgotten Life. Thanks.